Greetings, everyone. I'm super excited for this edition of the Moving Camp podcast from the United Supreme Council, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Prince Hall Affiliate, Northern Jurisdiction, USA Incorporated. Like I said, sometimes you got to give it the full thing, because especially for this edition of the podcast, I want people to understand what we're doing and what we're moving. So I'm gonna jump right into it. We have an extremely special guest that's going to be on here. Actually, two guests. One individual, you've seen him. He's not the new kid on the block. He's been here for a while, but he has a different hat on here. But I'm excited to introduce, in this capacity, our Lieutenant Grand Commander, Sovereign Grand Inspector General Carl Drummer, who's going to come off mute. He's going to come on here and he's going to give you a chance to be able to introduce our special guest speaker for this podcast edition. So without further ado, Lieutenant Grand Commander, good evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal, man. How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine, and honored to be on your podcast this evening.
Oh, man. Well, I appreciate you. This wouldn't have happened without you. And again, what we're doing here is trying to be able to exercise the tenets of that we learn in Scottish Rite Masonry, and being an active and involved member of our community is one of those things that are key principles that is based off of our right. So I will allow you the honor of introducing who we're getting ready to have on this podcast, because again, this is a pivotal moment for us, and I'm excited to just jump right into it so that we can be able to educate our community, our friends, so that we can move this thing forward. Okay, so I'll give it over to you.
Appreciate it. Well, Stephen, as you know, not just being your Lieutenant Grand Commander, I'm also chair of our civic engagement. And I was honored to reach out to my friend, Congressman Jim Clyburn, and ask him if he would spend a little time with us, giving us and bringing us up to date on what's going on nationally. And he graciously agreed to come on the podcast and give us an update. So with that being said, I want to introduce Jim Clyburn, the U.S. Congressman from South Carolina's 6th Congressional District, my Omega brother, my friend, the Congressman, and from the United Supreme Council of the Southern Jurisdiction, Prince Hall Affiliate, Congressman Jim Clyburn. Thank you, Congressman.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. And I hope presenting me here this evening, and I really enjoy very much your friendship in one of our endeavors. We call that a very essential element. It's essential to the soul. And I also enjoy our affiliation with Prince Hall Masonry and our levels as what I call 33rd degrees. But that doesn't exclude friends from Sigma, and from Kappa, and from Alpha. That's fine. And Iota, the new group on the block. But thank you guys so much for having me, and I hope we can have a good evening.
Oh, we're going to have a phenomenal evening here. And again, thank you so much for your time. And what I want to just jump right into it, because we're here for a mission, especially with what's going on right now in the political, social, and economic climate. There's a lot that's going on that's impacting us. And I think somebody like yourself to speak on it is going to be monumental for our community. So like I said, I'm going to jump right into it and go right from it. From your experience, Congressman, what are some of the most effective ways that our organizations like fraternities, sororities, churches, community organizations can unite to influence like local and national policy that will be able to help us out in what we're doing right now? Because like I said, there's an attack on people that look like us, right? So there's some things that we have to do to be able to mobilize. So I just want to jump right into it. What are some of your thoughts on how we can be able to unite under one common bond and move this thing forward?
Well, thank you so much for jumping into it. Look, I think one of the first things we got to really keep in mind is the history, not just of the country, but the history of the world. We are here in the United States of America, a very small element in the wide world of endeavors, people of all sorts. And we ought to keep that in mind. years ago, people came to the conclusion that our country really haven't been found on some real unbrotherly principles, even when the definitions were being given to human beings. We, people of color, who came into this country back in 1619, been here for more than 400 years, but for 244 of those years, we were an enslaved people. And after 13 years of what we call emancipation, we were thrust into a period that we call Jim Crow. A lot of people don't realize it, but the Emancipation Proclamation that ushered in the Reconstruction era took place on the 1st of January, 1863. And in 1877, a deal was made that brought an end to the Reconstruction era. And so it lasted for less than 14 years, about 13 years and 4 or 5 months. And when you realize that, and you know exactly what happened with Jim Crow, that lasted for nearly another 90 years. And then we got the 1954 Supreme Court decision that set us on course to building, in reality, a more perfect union for people, irrespective of skin color, and that has brought us to where we are today. Now, this didn't happen in isolation. The Supreme Court made the decision in 1954, but we made some congressional activities took place in 1964. 10 years after Brown v. Board of Education, we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Then a year later, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Then 3 years later, we got the 1968 Fair Housing Laws. All these things were incremental steps toward a more perfect union. However, as happened back in the 1870s, retrogression started to set in around 12 years ago when the Supreme Court, in a new decision, really gutted the Voting Rights Act. And we hear going on all over the country today the results of that. Now, the Supreme Court did something that was very interesting when it decided that because all these things that had taken place since 1965 meant that there were more African Americans getting elected to office, more African Americans enjoying the right to vote, then we don't need any more safeguards. Well, you see what's going on in Texas now, what's going on in Missouri, what has been attempted by some people here in South Carolina. I've heard from my good friend there, Emmanuel Cleaver, that they have put out a plan to eliminate his district. And we are at a point where we could very well be reliving that which took place back in the 1870s. Now, you ask a very important question. What can we do in order to make sure we don't repeat that which took place back in the 1870s? I just finished my third book. My first book was about, I call it Uncommon Courage. It's about those people from the little Clarendon County, South Carolina, that started the efforts that led to that 1954 Supreme Court decision, Brown v. Board of Education. Started right here in South Carolina, a little town of Summerton, just about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So I wrote a book about them. Then my second book was called Blessed Experiences. You see it here behind me. That book is all about my life, and it's really my memoir. But after January 6th, I embarked upon writing a third book. And I finished the book, spent last week doing the audio. It's going to be released in November. And in that book, I lay out some things I think that we need to be aware of, what we need to learn from, and what we need to be careful about. I used to teach history, and I used to tell my students all the time, anything that's happened before can happen again. And I think that's where we are today. Now, our forebears back in the 1870s were only 13 years out of slavery when they lost all of their rights in 1877. We had the benefit of that history. We had the benefit of learning what happened, why it happened. And we ought to now make sure that we don't make those same mistakes again. George Santayana, someone I've read often, once intoned, if you fail to learn the lessons of history, you're bound to repeat them. Right. And so what I'm trying to do, and this tonight is a part of it, getting people to understand that the history is what it is. You can't change it, but you can learn from it. And if you learn from that history, then it's incumbent upon you to take steps to make sure you don't repeat that history. And one of the things I've seen over the last several years is that people have decided that, well, it's always been this way. Well, what I do won't make any difference. If that's true, what did John Lewis and all the people of Selma, what did they give up on that bridge trying to get the right to vote? And they changed their lives. When they got the vote in Alabama, we got the vote in South Carolina, we got the vote all over the country, things changed. So how can you look back on what happened during Jim Crow, look back on Brown v. Board of Education, look back on what our parents and grandparents went through, and the history is right there, how clear our participating in the voting process changed all of that. Now, all of a sudden, you say, well, I'm not going to vote because my vote won't make any difference. How can you possibly come to that conclusion if you know the history? And so I think that what we've got here is people are not engaged in exactly what it is they're participating in the process is all about. So the first thing is, you've got to participate in the process. You can't stand over in the corner somewhere and just wish this thing away. Now, those of us who are guided by the principles of free and accepted masonry, we are guided by some very biblical principles. And it is very clear. And I tell people all the time, it's not hard. If you have a problem trying to understand it, pick up your Bible and start reading some scripture. And it's very clear that what's required of us: do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. And that's not a New Testament principle. We like to think of it. That's an Old Testament principle. They're in the book of Michael. But there's some New Testament principles, those of us who profess Christianity. And it's very clear in Luke 10, where we get the story of the Good Samaritan we learn from that story that we're required to really get beyond our own comfort zones. It would be very comfortable for the Samaritan to walk on by or ride on by the Jewish guy on the side of the road. They were different ethnic backgrounds. Samaritans and the Jews did not get along. But when this Jew was laying on the side of the road, having been robbed, beaten up, and left to die, this Samaritan comes by. He didn't look at him and said, "Oh, he's Jewish. He ain't one of us," and would keep on going. No, he stopped and ministered unto him, even though people who looked like him, who was in the same religion, even the priests, passed on by. And so those are the things that we learn. But we have to participate in the process, and we have to be guided by those principles that we were raised with, and not really sit back and let the world keep going as it's going now. Because there's always going to be people who are going to try to misuse the system. What's going on today is not new. I don't know, you or me have been too young to remember Richard Nixon, but Nixon tried to do this, and in the bipartisan way, he was stopped. I mean, he was Goldwater from Arizona. You can't be more conservative than Goldwater was. He said to Richard Nixon, "Oh no, we're not going to let you trample upon the Constitution." And they checked him, and he resigned from office. But today, for some reason, we decide, well, you can trample on the Constitution. We're not going to worry about checking you. We're not going to worry about saying what the facts are. So I would say to our listeners, get involved. Don't give up on this system. If you do, what do you think your children and your grandchildren, what do you think their future is going to be? You know, I just celebrated the 46th anniversary of my 39th birthday. That means I'm 85 years old.
I'm gonna use that down the road. I like that. I like that.
But I got 3 daughters, 4 grandchildren, and this morning I got one of the biggest surprises of my life from a great granddaughter. Asked her mother to get me. She wanted to have FaceTime with me, and so I can't do things here today or fail to do things today. With that little 3-year-old girl, I've got to make sure that I do everything I possibly can so that she will have as many chances I've got. If you sit back and see this stuff coming apart, see people doing anything they want to do, see people trampling on the Constitution of the United States, see people doing the things that are necessary to prevent us from voting, to see people taking the contributions of people of color out of the museums. Rosa Parks, how can you deny children the opportunity to read a book about Rosa Parks? How do you remove books about Martin Luther King Jr. from schools, and you're going to sit back and say, I'm not going to be involved in the people who just got elected to your school board or taken out of the library the books written by people who look like you, books written about people who look like you, people your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren need to know about, to know what their worth is to our society. There's only one reason you would take these books out of the library, and that is so these children will have nobody that they can identify with. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing we got to do. We got to get involved. not just to vote or register to vote, to go to these school board meetings. My youngest daughter is on the school board. I talked to her twice already today about what these decisions that are being made in Washington, denying or making all the cuts they're doing, the food stamps. These cuts will have a dramatic impact on the children in the schools that she has been elected to help manage. These cuts to Medicaid are going to have a tremendous impact. These cuts, I went to a funeral on Saturday. Joe Darby, who was my pastor in Charleston, passed away. And I have a lot of friends who are pastors who are Sigmas. Joe Darby happened to have been in Omega. I spoke at his funeral on Saturday. And when I got to the church, a young pastor, a woman, stopped me to tell me that she got a letter 6 months ago, a little more than 6 months ago, well, last year, late last year, telling her that her student loans debt had been forgiven, eliminated. And then she told me 2 weeks ago, she got a letter telling her she was in default. That's the difference in the former administration and this administration. Now, it makes a difference. So I know there's some other things you may want to talk about, and I'll be glad to talk about it. But I just think that the first thing we've got to do is think about our children, our grandchildren, and just ask yourself, anytime you get to make a decision about voting, about participating, about what's going on in your community, ask yourself, what can I do to make things better for my children and my grandchildren? And when you do something or fail to do something, ask yourself, did that contribute to my children's future? My not voting, what good is that going to do for my children? My child just may come upon the need for a decision to be made about what kind of education they're going to have, about what kind of job they're going to have. That is what we've got to do. We got to get involved, and sometimes it requires getting outside of your comfort zone to do so.
No, and Congressman, I appreciate you, and I want you to continue because one, I believe people need to hear and understand the passion too, because sometimes people think what the kids talk about is lip service. Like, no, you have to see and feel the passion. There's some things you said that really spoke out to me. Is one, it's a simple but hard thing to do, right? To vote. There's a reason why they're trying to take away certain people's vote because there's power in it, right? So there's
Absolutely.
something we have to execute. One thing I never thought about that you gave me some inspiration in this case is not so much as we've been here before, but more so of like this has gone on before and we've been able to get out of it. Now, understanding where some of these things started just from the town that's 20 minutes from you, that told me that I don't have to be in a big city. Like I can make an impact if I'm passionate and I'm consistent and I'm communicating my message. So to the people who are watching this right now, understand that one, getting involved and actually participating in the democratic process, not just every 4 years, but I'm assuming like local elections too as well. Like all of it matters, right?
Absolutely.
Also, too, this is point out, and shame on me, and I'm saying this in front of everybody, all the people that see this. I can't tell you who's on my school board, but what Congressman just said was, I need to understand who these people are. because they're going to impact my children's education. So hopefully you've gotten that message too to get involved. That's one thing, because our goal in this podcast is to give you tangible, actionable items. So it's voting, understanding what's going on in your local elections, school board. And the last thing I took away from what you said was just education and the history. So getting out and buying these different books and understanding and looking at these podcasts so you can understand your history from people that look like you. That's the key thing. The people that look like you writing your history. And so I want to go into a quick question for those of us that are getting excited and we know we need to do something, we need to step up as leaders. What would you suggest us do as young Black leaders in our communities, and these worshipful masters or these commanders in chiefs, these individuals? What are some things that we can do to be more impactful, to kind of protect and, like you said, do more for our children and our grandchildren?
Well, two things. The first one I want to say, and I want to thank you for bringing this to my mind. Briggs v. Elliott, the case that I talked about over here in Summerton, South Carolina, that became Brown v. Board of Education. The original case was Briggs v. Elliott.
Okay.
Harry Briggs, the first name on that petition. Harry Briggs was not an educated person. When he signed that petition, he was working at a filling station, making $22 a week. His wife was working at a motel, a child woman at a motel, making $18 a week. And they signed that petition because they wanted a better life for their children. And when they signed that petition, both of them were fired from their jobs. But they go down in history as two of the most important people to ever live in this country, because they're the ones, along with 23 others, but the first names on that list was Harry Briggs and his wife, Eliza. And I keep their pictures up in my office. So I want our listeners to know this ain't about whether or not you got high school education or a college degree. This is about whether or not you got some common sense and you're thinking about your children and your grandchildren, and you're going to do the things that are necessary for them to get the way of life that they need. Now, for us as members of Prince Hall Masonry, I want you to keep in mind why we are called Prince Hall Masons. Because there's a man named Prince Hall who made a significant contribution to creating free masonry here in this country. What he went through after being denied the ability to form this union in this country, how he went back to Europe and got the charter to allow people of color. Masonry was here. He wanted to become a part of it. And it says, no, because your skin color, we aren't going to give you the charter. But he went back to Europe and he got the charter through Ireland. And that's how we became a part of it. Because we not give up, because you get denied. He was denied in this country, went back to another country to get it. That's the kind of stuff we have to keep in mind. Don't give up. You just never give up. You keep going. And then remember the contributions that Masons and the whole element of Masonry makes to this country. This book that I just told you I'm writing called The First Eight. This is about the 8 African Americans that served in Congress from South Carolina before me. I'm the 9th. But the problem is there are 95 years between number 8 and number 9.
Wow.
95 years. Because of that deal that was struck in 1877 that took us out of office. And the two things during that 95-year period that were denied every time it came up. Number one was voting. Number two was education. Those were the two things. You can go down through the history and you can see when people of color were fighting for their rights, the two things throughout the 95-year period that they never got an opportunity for was they were taking away the vote and they were denying education. And those two things ought to tell you why you need to stay in school, keep your children in school, and why you need to participate in the electoral process, because these people know how important that vote is. And that is what we can do as Prince Hall Masons. Make ourselves committees of one and participate in the process individually, but also collectively, because we're organized. And no group better organized than Masons.
True.
I mean, we are very organized, and we are highly respected in our local communities. And so I just think we need to really put that organization to work. We've been joking about the Sigmas and the Omegas. We're all members of the Divine Nine, and there, I understand, maybe a 10th very soon. But the Divine Nine, organized. And we need to put the organization to work. You mentioned the faith community. My father was a minister. My father kept 3 books in his pulpit. He kept his Bible, he kept his hymnal, and he kept another book that he made himself. It was a book of loose leaf binder of every registered voter in the precinct that we lived in. And part of my job when the elections came up was to knock on those doors and make sure that everybody turned out to vote. And so through the faith community, in fact, I have an organization that I put together years ago, and I still keep it going. I call it the 4 Ps. Now, when I was growing up, anytime you said the person is victim of the 4 Ps, it was not complimentary. Black, poor, prior, planning is what we use for 4 Ps. I decided to take that and turn it into a positive. And so I call it Pastor, Parish, Precinct Project. Pastor, Parish, Precinct Project. I keep close contact with the faith community, not just in my state, but all around the country. I've had yesterday and today, I've been texting back and forth with Dr. Jerry Young down in Mississippi, who just spent 8 years as president of the National Baptist Association. I stay in close contact with them. On Monday, I did a podcast with several AME ministers. I stay in close contact with them. Nothing is new. When people tell me, well, this is the barber shop this and the beauty shop that. Look, the first African American to serve in Congress or get elected to the United States House of Representatives, a guy named Joseph Rainey from Georgetown, South Carolina. Guess how he made his living? He was a barber. So none of this is new. One of those first 8 I just talked about was Richard Kane, who was from Ohio, went to Wilberforce, came to Charleston, South Carolina, to pastor Emmanuel AME Church, became the first pastor of Morris Brown Church that I grew up in, and got elected to Congress, and later became a bishop in the AME Church. So none of this is new. It's been happening forever. And so what we need to do is stop desecrating the sacrifices that these people made. Joseph Rainey the barber, Richard Kane, the preacher, and bishop. Why should we not do the same now? We've got to do this. Our children are not going to have good futures if we allow history to repeat itself. I still think about my mother and father almost daily. In fact, I do think about them daily because, look, I know what they went through. I was just telling a couple of people earlier today, right here in my house, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes from here, I saw how my father was treated with my mother looking on when I was a teenager. It's a town to this day I don't stop in. It's no more than 15 minutes from here where I live, but I never stop in that town because I remember what my daddy went through. These kinds of things, we cannot allow them to come back. And if we don't participate as people of faith, if we don't participate as members of the craft, if we do not participate as coteries in the divine nine, we are who people are looking to help us get to where we need to be so that our children will have the opportunities that our parents fought so hard and sacrificed for us to have.
And I'm gonna tell you something, Congressman. One, hopefully, again, I think while we have this type of podcast is again, we have to understand and see the passion. Hearing that story from you about your father and the treatment and that impact, I think individuals, as you watch this podcast, realize it wasn't that long ago. And I think that's what they try to do. They try to, like, my wife taught me something. They said, why are all the pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King in black and white? Because they wanted to make you feel like it was a long time ago. I was like, no, it was like, no, it wasn't that long at all. So you have to understand. But also, you said something that's very, very key. We have the resilience, the fortitude, the ambition, and the capability, regardless of educational background, to be powerful movers within our community. And thank you for sharing those stories because I feel bad as an African American man. I didn't know some of those names you just told. So I really want the audience to listen and hear and do what I'm doing when I hop off of this. My son's getting ready to come down. We're going to look up some stuff. Nowadays, you got TikTok, YouTube. You don't have an excuse. All right. So let's just remove that out the way. There's no excuses, gentlemen.
No excuse.
It's just let's get into this and let's start learning because at that point, I think that's where the passion comes in there. And the last thing I just want to ask here, Congressman, because I know you're extremely busy. And again, thank you so much. If there was, let's say, somebody's going to watch this podcast in 50 years from now, what is a clear message or a clear action item that they should be working on right now that's timeless that they should be going through? Because I just want to make sure we drill this message home. So 50 years from now, a young Mason is watching this. What would you have to say to him or a lower lady, excuse me, or her about what they need to be able to do to take care for their family?
Well, there are several things that I really, when I do commencement, I don't care if it's a medical school graduation, a law school graduation, or an elementary school graduation. There are 3 points that I make, and I make them very simple. Number one, and I don't have to, I ask people sometimes, please repeat this. I want you to finish this sentence. If at first you don't succeed, try
again.
Absolutely. They didn't say try one more time or 2 more times. No limit on how many times you try. I lost 3 times before I ever got elected to office.
Oh, wow.
And someone said to me, what you gonna do now? You know what they say, 3 strikes and you're out. And I said to them, that's a baseball rule. And nobody should live their lives by baseball rules. If I had quit after losing 3 times, I never would have become the number 3 guy in the United States House of Representatives, which I became several years ago. So that's the first thing I tell people. The second thing I say to people is, please remember to always demonstrate thankfulness. Thankfulness, demonstrate that. Your parents made these big sacrifices, and don't lose your manners. Always be thankful and know how to say thank you. And the third thing I say to people is the future is out there waiting on you. Nobody knows what capabilities you have until you demonstrate them. And you see these, I don't know if you can see them behind me. There's some people on this panel behind me. One of them is Charles R. Drew, an Omega brother. Charles Drew, Daniel Hale Williams. I don't know what his affiliation was, if he had any, but I do know that he performed the first open heart surgery ever performed in this country. I know that the first person to set foot on the North Pole was a guy named Henson. He's back here too. These are people who did extraordinary things that you aren't going to see in most textbooks. And so what you have to do is make sure that you do the things that are necessary to open up that potential that's in you. These people, one of the founders of our fraternity was a guy named Ernest Everett Just. Ernest Everett Just was from Charleston, South Carolina, became known as the Apollo of science. He was considered to be one of the foremost geniuses in the scientific world. Born right down here in Charleston, educated at South Carolina State before he went off to become what he became. Now, we cannot allow all of this that's in us. We still got to find a cure for cancer. We don't know what the skin color of the person will be that will open up the secrets to find the cure for cancer. If Charles Drew can open up secrets and figure out how to refrigerate blood and save it until it's needed so we can have blood transfusions today, somebody out there, and nobody knows the skin color of that person, that will find a cure for cancer. Cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis. These are things still left that need to be done. Both my parents died from cancer. My mother was only 55 years old. So I have no idea what's going on in my body. I want somebody to find a cure, and nobody's going to care what the skin color is. So I think that we've got to do the things that are necessary to allow our children the ability or the opportunities to create the ability to do these things. And we cannot let people, no matter who they are, no matter what position they may hold, cut them short. We have got to stay involved in this process. And that is what's going on now. That's why you see them now trying, once again, deny the votes, nullify the votes. In some way, make sure your vote, it won't matter. And that's why you see them trying to deny education and educational opportunities to people, because those two things are the things, they're the two greatest equalizers that we got in our society. Your vote and your education. Those two things you should always be in pursuit of. And so I want to thank you guys for having me. I hope I didn't filibuster too much and too long, but I think that we are at a place in our society that if we're not careful, we are going to relive. Just think about this. Can you imagine your children having to live the life that your grandparents lived?
Mm.
If we do not check what's going on today, if we do not get into this process and participate, that's exactly what's going to happen. These children, born to those 8 people who served in the United States Congress in the 1870s, their children were the age of my parents. And I know what they went through because somebody allowed the clock to get turned back. He should not allow that to happen today.
Mm.
And Stephen, the congressman is so right. Congressman, real quick, if you tell the story of South Carolina in the President Biden's election, if not for you, President Biden would not have gotten elected based on him losing the states before he got to South Carolina, and you deciding when the young lady at the church asked you, which way are you going?
Yeah, that's an interesting, Biden had lost all 3 contests, and ain't but 4 in that window, and South Carolina was number 4. He had gone out to Iowa and had lost pretty badly. I think he finished 3rd or 4th in Iowa, finished 5th in New Hampshire, a distant second in Nevada. And so the day before, the Friday before the South Carolina primary, my accountant had passed away. And I came home from Washington on Thursday evening, and there was a notice in my mail that his funeral was going to be the next day. And I was on my way to Charleston for that debate. So I said that what I'm going to do is wait until tomorrow morning, and on my way to Charleston, I'm going to go through the little town of Eastover, Hopkins, South Carolina, and attend this funeral. And when I got to the funeral, James White is his name. I got there about 30 minutes early. I walked down the aisle of the church. And when I got to view and pay my last respects to Jim, as I turned to leave the coffin, my eyes met the eyes of a lady sitting on the front row, on the farthest distance away from the coffin. And she beckoned to me. And I went over to her. I had never seen her before. And she said to me, I want you to lean down because I have a question I need to ask you. And if you don't want anybody to hear your answer, I want you to whisper it in my ear. And so I leaned down, and she said to me, what are you going to do in this primary election? Who are you voting for? And so I leaned down, and as she asked me to do, and that's kind of whispered in the air, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. And she snapped her head back and she looked at me, and I cannot explain the look on her face. And she says, I needed to hear that. And the people in this community are waiting to hear from you. And I was really taken aback. But then I left her. Remember, it was before the service started. And so I went down the aisle, going out of the church to meet the family when they drove up. And 2 or 3 people stopped me on the way. And people were waiting to hear from me. And so when I left the church that day after that funeral, I put together or started putting together the effort to go public with my endorsement of Joe Biden. And sure enough, he won the state by 29 points. Now, all of that, although I knew what I was personally going to do, I had no idea that there were people waiting to hear from me. And that's the way it is with people who are in positions. People would like to know, what are you learning that I may not know? And I think that those people who criticized me for supporting Joe Biden back then, and I did get a lot of criticism for it, all you got to look at what the alternative to Joe Biden back then, you know who that was, and that's who you have now. And then you have to ask yourself, which was the best alternative?
Absolutely. Well, Congressman, I want to thank you again for joining us on this podcast. And I do want to say this. I read your first 2 books, and they were outstanding reads. You kind of held out on me about this 3rd book that you dropped on us tonight. And, you've signed both of my other books. So I want to be first in line. So I need to know what I need to do, because I just saw you in Tunica. I'll see you at the CBC. What do I need to do? What do the Masons need to do to be first in line to get our book signed? You said you're working on it. What do we need to do to be first in line to get this book? Because if they read your other books, and if they haven't, they need to get them. And we need to be first in line to get your next book, because it definitely will be something amazing to read.
Well, I'm going to make sure that you get the book on time. Now, the book is finished. I finished doing the recording, the audio, but the publishing house decided that the perfect time to release this book will be after these elections, which will be on on November 4th, in preparation for next year's election, will be November 2026. So the book will be released on November 11th. And you can pre-order now, though. I think didn't I give you a pre-order card?
I received it's a pre-order we can do. Okay, the
Yes.
Pre-order, absolutely. So right. I will send the pre-order out then on the book. Okay, right. We'll send the pre-order out throughout our universe in that case.
Please do.
To make sure that all of our members have an opportunity to do the pre-order on right. that. Okay, absolutely. And we will share that in our universe to make sure everybody has an opportunity to pre-order the book before the November 11th launch. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for that. Send out to both the northern and the southern jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Well, again, Congressman, I appreciate your time and your effort. You've inspired me to do a little bit more. There's some more history that I need to be able to partake in, because I think at that point, there's 2 things that I've gotten from this conversation. One, even though I'm one person, I can make a big impact. Okay. I just got to keep doing it. And that's to everybody that's watching or listening to this. And then the second part is there's so much pride in what we've accomplished that we just have to keep singing our own praises in a sense, right? So like there's going to be a conversation with my son, my daughters, of some of the names you talked about here today. We just started some new affirmations in the morning here for our family, so we might have to add in a little extra with the history. Sure. So that we can make sure that my kids grow up into a community and in an area that I can be proud of and I can feel comfortable with. And what I'll do right now here is there's a couple Lieutenant Grand Commander, Sovereign Grand Inspector General, Carl Drummer. I personally have to say thank you publicly on this platform. I've reached out to you. You would have thought this brother was my cousin, uh, my family member, because he communicates with me like that, right? There's not any titles or anything. So publicly, I just want to give you your roses right now because you're a very humble and extremely hardworking guy, and you answer my phone calls. And I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's answering my calls. Wow, that's crazy. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there anything else you have for the group or for the people before we head out here?
I don't have anything. I just want to say you do a magnificent job on your podcast and throughout Masonry, and I'm so proud of you. And again, I just want to thank the Congressman for his time and all that he does and what he does in Congress. Because if not for him, we wouldn't be where we are today, and we have to keep pushing and doing the work that it takes to make sure that people like us are represented, not just nationally, but as he said, it starts at the school board level. We have to start at the grassroots level, and if we don't start there, as one of my mentors said here in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Honorable Bill Crawford, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Oh man, I like that one. I like that. Everyone, thank you so much for joining this very exclusive and unique and impactful and necessary podcast. And I'm going to recap what the Congressman said just so that there's no confusion. Okay. One, try again. Just keep trying. Pick yourself up, keep going. Two, be thankful. Have an abundance of thanks. And we as Masons and Eastern Star Loyal Ladies, we understand the grand architect of the universe and the bountiful blessings that he provides for us. And the third thing is make sure that you understand and you're active in the voter process and education. If you don't fight for two other things, you fight for those two things because that's going to be able to help secure that your children's are going to grow up into a society that you can be proud of and that you can be comfortable with. So until the next time, this is one of our exclusive Moving Camp podcast editions. I'm excited. I'm your host, Knight Commander Stephen Baird. Until next time.